I Am Athlete Parlay is killing it this year.
These are guaranteed wins.
I'm gonna take Arizona over San Fran.
Whoa.
Daniel Jones over Patrick Mahomes at home?
Welcome back, students, to the Week 14 I Am Athlete Parlay. I'm telling you guys week after week that a parlay is when you take multiple bets and you put it into one. You have to channel your inner football IQ to get this done at a high level. Downward facing dog, child pose, the way of the peaceful warrior. It's not a pose, but it's a great book. Trying to teach you guys the essence of yoga and the essence of how yoga can help you pick the right bets. Week 14, I Am Athlete Parlay, here are the 3 games. We're gonna start with Big Ben going to Minnesota. The Pittsburgh Steelers in Minnesota, playing against Kirk Cousins. Breathe, breath, everyone. Here you go, great. Big Ben's not gonna get it done, Jade. Kirk Cousins having an MVP year. That's a great bet for you, okay? All right, Mitch, we're gonna head down to Chicago and Green Bay. Chicago and Green Bay, Last Dance, Aaron Rodgers. Do you wanna bet against Aaron Rodgers in the Last Dance? Have you watched football this year? Let's go with Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers. And to to close out the I Am Athlete Parlay, we're going to go with Baltimore and Cleveland. Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson. Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson. Let's go with Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. They get it done. Namaste. DraftKings.com is the sports book. I Am Athlete is the platform. Parlay, I Am Athlete, all day. Promo code athlete. Let's get it.
Your first owner we had on, I Am NASCAR. Is ownership just about being rich? That's what it seems like. You get a lot of money, you can be an owner.
You know, they say to make a small fortune in racing, you got to start with a big one. You don't get rich owning race teams.
Right. But to that point, is that what it is? You get rich, you like racing, and now you just
everybody's got
money into it?
I mean, everybody's got a different story. Everybody's got a different want and a different desire, different reason for doing it. I grew up dreaming about winning a Daytona 500, winning NASCAR Cup Series races, being a champion. And that dream is as strong today as it was the day I drove a race car for the first time. But there was a moment in my life where I realized that I had to change the path a little bit, that I was better on the business side of this sport than I was behind the wheel. So I got out of the race car and got in on the business side, but still chasing that same dream.
I had some amazing moments in my career where I can go back, you know, even Little League football. It's like, man, it was just me, myself, right, in the mirror. That's it. So when you talked about understanding that you had to get out of the race car to accomplish your goals, can you go back to that moment? Do you remember?
It's a mirror moment.
It was a mirror moment?
For sure. You know, it got to the point where I was working so hard to find ways to get in the race car through business I was doing, through sponsorship, raising sponsorship for the race cars and doing all this work. And I started racing against these kids that were fast, fearless kids. I mean, it's like once you start racing against people you start calling kids, that's, right. That's the first thing, right? So I realized I was getting a little older. Man, I was working so hard on the business side of it just to put myself in the seat. I just had that moment, right, where it's like, are you gonna do this forever?
Right.
You're gonna grind this out year after year just so you can be a race car driver? Because you're 35, like Roger Penske isn't gonna call you tomorrow to drive one of his cup cars. And I just said, okay, time to pivot.
And it's funny, that's something that I asked Rowdy.
Yeah.
I asked Rowdy about it. I was like, are you gonna age out? Do you age out or do you mature out of a car? Do you mentally mature out of a car or you just can't? Yeah, you say you call them kids, or you just can't race against those fearless kids anymore.
Well, he's different because Rowdy is one of those guys that never had to worry about anything besides just driving a race car because he was so good.
You know why?
And he delivered every time.
Richie Rich syndrome is what I call that. Is when your parents race, they have money. Your uncles race, they have money. Then you come up as the grandchild or the cousin or the nephew of the ones with money. The car is in your living room, ready for you. Your crew chiefs are already set. And then you show up to the track, the tire is already prepped. You're just whooping butt, and you're winning in everything you're in. But when I heard you talking about how you had to do a lot of stuff on your own, Justin, you weren't a slouch as a driver either. You had an edge, you had personality with everything you did, and I really feel like that matters too. When you're coming up as a young driver, but you had to work for everything you got. That's what you mean by that?
Well, I mean, for sure. I think for a guy like Kyle Busch, for a guy like Kyle Larson, for some of these guys, they have every time they've gotten in a race car, they've delivered. Win a ton, right? And win all the time. And when you do that, you always have an opportunity. Somebody's always going to put you in the race car, right? If you just deliver and get the job done. As far as aging out or maturing out, I mean, to me, the only retired race car driver is one that they won't let him in the racetrack anymore because he's too old. I'm retired, but I still race about 4 or 5 times a year. I mean, just because it's it's hard to just.
You know what? Because you're the road course
ringer king.
They say you used to jump on the road courses and embarrass people now.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you're, we talk about athletes, and the thing about race car drivers is that I believe that this is a sport, and I believe that our drivers are athletes, but it's a different kind of athlete. We're not using fast twitch muscle fibers. It's not that kind of thing, but we're using our bodies and our minds in a competitive environment to win something, right? But in our sport, our bodies can stay strong in a race car for a long time. See, like Kevin Harvick won 9 races last year, and he's 44, 45 years old. You can do this, for a long time, and Kyle will. Yeah. Kyle Busch Rowdy will race.
Well, his answer to me when I asked him about aging out was, "I'm never gonna suck."
Yeah.
That's how he responded. Because I was like, you're going to get to a point where you just know you can't do it. Yeah. Oh, I'm never going to suck.
Are you surprised by his answer?
As we all know, Rowdy.
That's a glimpse into his confidence and his swagger for sure. And that makes a difference on the racetrack. But he will be slower at 70 than he is now. Yeah. I promise you that.
Absolutely.
So I mean, we're talking about driving. We're talking about ownership. That's how we started the show. You getting outside of the car to chase your dreams. You want to win Daytona 500. But you also acquired Chip Ganassi's NASCAR portfolio pretty much, right? And infrastructure operation. That's a lot of risk because what I'm learning is it's not a great business for some being an owner. Why are you taking on all that risk right now?
Well, because I think that you can think about this. There's not one way to do this business. There's a lot of ways to do this business.
Right.
And so there are people that have gotten burned and people that have had a bad experience and then classified their experience as the business. That's not my business, right? My business is being strategic and recognizing opportunities, managing and mitigating risk, and making educated decisions and accepting the risk for it. So, for Chip's deal, I'll just run you through that real quick. I mean, before that acquisition, Trackhouse was a small boutique race team.
That's right.
We were partnered with RCR and we helped share overhead and costs with them, but we didn't have a shop, we didn't own race cars, we didn't own tools, a lot of the guys working on the team were contracted through RCR. So really, Trackhouse was like 10 people without a building. That's really how we raced this year. So to secure our future in the sport, the goal was to find a way to own one of these charters. It's a way to get into the sport, have some longevity, have an asset that's worth something. There was, with all these charters, there was just a game happening at the back, and there were these narratives being planted in places, right, to just try to drive the cost of these things up. Right. When the addressable market was really, really small, there wasn't enough buyers out there to have the market dictate what one costs. It's just deal by deal. You find the guy that's willing to pay what you want, and that's the deal. And everybody was focused on these couple of charters, and I took a step back and said, there's something else here on the board that nobody's seeing. There's another deal to be done in this sport that no one's paying attention to. And I looked up the order and I looked at the owners, and I just thought to myself, there's an owner in this sport that's ready to walk away. And it may be hard to find it, but as I started thinking about that, I started just thinking about Chip. and thinking about Chip. And I have a relationship with Chip, and I raced for Chip, and I won for Chip. And I've got a lot of people in that building that I consider my friends and people that I respect. And I saw the writing on the wall a little bit that this is a guy that is ready to put a period on the end of the sentence of his NASCAR career.
Right.
And I thought, how do I pick up the phone and call Chip Ganassi and have this conversation? How do you even start that conversation?
Right.
I thought about it for 2 weeks, and then I dropped my girls off at school and pulled out of the carpool lane, and I was driving home, and it's like, there's only one thing to do. You just pick up the phone and make the call.
That's it.
That's all you do. Pick up the phone and make the call. So I said, look, I have to think about the future of this business. I have to think about doing something significant that secures the long-term viability of this business and gives us a real opportunity to grow and do something big in this sport. And I want to just start out of respect to you and ask you if there's 1% chance that you would entertain a conversation about a possible transaction around your business. Then I'll get on a plane, I'll fly to Pittsburgh, and we'll sit in your office and talk about it. And he started talking about, when a man gets to my age, you start thinking about the future, and you start thinking, do I want to go to the racetrack? He's got all these racing teams. Do I want to go to the racetrack every week? And he started talking about 60 seconds. I said, I'm going to do this deal. I was like, I'm going to do this. I was thinking to myself, I'm going to do this deal.
Is that before you knew Pitbull and you partnered with him too?
No. This was after. This was this was really like this spring.
Okay.
So I was on a plane to Pittsburgh the next day, sitting in his office the next day.
Wow.
And he was ready, and I was ready, and it was great.
So that moment right there, when you did that with the phone and you said, I'm going to do this deal, right? I see the passion, I see the hunger, I see the desire. Sport is business, business is sport. Which one fulfills you more? Because as an athlete, right? Like, think about that. Football player, you still drive. We don't have the opportunity to go out there, but we still watch on Sunday.
Yeah.
We still love that. We still talk about the good old days, right? And now in business, it gives you that rush. It gives you, a lot of things that football gave you. But for you, what fuels you more?
Besides my wife and my 2 kids, I love racing more than anything in the world. I just love it. I watch it every day on television and on the internet, and I've worked really hard over the last couple of years to try to, and continuing to, and I have a long ways to go, but to try to really understand this business and what it takes to be successful, learning from people that have been successful, but also thinking open-minded and disruptive, and how can I do things different? How can I create something different to create a lot of value and opportunity for the future? I've worked hard at all that. But all that work has been guided by I'm the same kid that played with Hot Wheels on my grandparents' carpet when I was 5 years old watching Winston Cup races on TNN. I'm the same person. I love it. And every day I wake up wanting to do something great today because I'm guided by that passion.
What's more difficult? Because you said you got out of racing because you wanted to win the big ones, and you, in your mind, you had to be in the ownership side, the business side to do that.
Yeah.
Is it more, because you've succeeded as an owner over a racer, is it harder to be a racer or harder to do what you're doing now?
I mean, he was a good racer.
Oh, you gonna call him out?
But he was a great racer.
But he didn't win the big one until ownership.
And he had a little chip, and he liked to look good, feel good, play good.
Oh, that's who he was?
Get paid good. That's how he was.
Right.
His teams look good. They paid. I mean, the rumors, people talk around the track. They paid well. When they showed up to the track, the pit boxes were new.
Right.
Back in the day when he was teamed up with H. Scott for about 3 years, they ran the show. So a lot of drivers, a lot of team owners were former drivers, but not a lot of owners were good drivers. I mean, and when they drove, how they had money, they drove, and I'm on the team, but, Justin, from what I remember, when I was pitting cars, you were a pretty chippy, talented driver, just one break away from a top-tier team.
I wanted it. I wanted it badly, and I worked hard for it. I didn't have that extra little it to get over the hump and not have to go find my own sponsorship and all that stuff to where, my phone was ringing and I had opportunities. I never got to that point.
What is that it? Because now you're sitting in that seat as an owner and you got to go find that.
Yeah, I got to go find it. That's right. That's exactly right. Thank you. Because I've asked myself that question the last year. I've transitioned. I've spent my whole career thinking about my talent, what I have to do to be successful. Now I have to shift my mindset. And what did I not have that I got to go find now to elevate Trackhouse and to take Trackhouse to the next level? And the short answer is I don't know. But you know it when you see it.
Ooh.
But I can't tell you these are the 3 things, these are the 5 things. I mean, we can talk about it, right? We can talk rate of adaptation. We can talk, yeah. I mean, media savvy, adapting to certain scenarios, courage, right? Knowledge of the race car. We can talk, right? Those are the things. I mean, in any sport.
Sound like you just named Danny Suarez. Well, that's what it sounds like.
Right?
Well,
it's hard to
say
say exactly what it is. Yeah, and what I look for is guys when they get the opportunity, they make something of it. And they don't say, well, hold on, give me some more time, or they think of an excuse, or they think like, man, I have to get used to this car. Like, we don't want the excuses. We don't have time to wait on anybody. Right? So Ross, who was driving these cars that were not the fastest cars in the Xfinity Series, kind of like a 15th place team that he was just through grit and determination was sort of finishing like 12th with every weekend, got an opportunity to do 3 races at Chip Ganassi Racing. First time and only time at that point in his career that he got to sit in race winning equipment. He did 3 races. First race, led all the laps, crashed for the lead with Kevin Harvick. Yep. Second race, won both stages, led all the laps, won the race. Third race, started off crappy, figured out how to get his car, 10 more laps, would have won that race.
Wow.
Bam, delivered right away. That's what you look for. Right. You don't look for a guy that's going to run 10th in the first race, 8th in the second, 7th in the third, and be like, I'm getting it, just give me some more races.
Right.
We don't have time.
We talked earlier before the show, just you and I sitting down, and you were like, Justin is like this new age owner. And what you told me was, about development. He has this affinity for developing drivers, and he sees it, he gets it. It's funny that you can't articulate it, but there's a lot of people around NASCAR that know that you got it and you see talent, right?
Yep. Like you know it when you see it. You know it when you see it.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Most of the time, you know it when you see it. There's risk involved. There's risk and faith in it. I mean, you find someone who I think he's the one, and you have to believe, right? And you have to commit and you have to believe. I'm always somebody that, when you look at who do I want to drive for Trackhouse, and you look at these guys, like is Ryan Blaney in a contract year? Is Kyle Busch or Kurt Busch in a contract year? Can I get one of these guys, I go, who's racing on Saturdays that's ready to break through? Like, I'm ready to find that next guy. Right. Because when you look back through history, the greats, like of the last 30 years, most of the guys that have really done something big for their teams came in that way. Jeff Gordon, Hendricks, I think that guy can do it. Put him in the 24. Jimmy Johnson won 1 race in his whole career. Wasn't on anybody's radar. Rick Hendrick goes, Jeff Gordon goes, I think he can do it. Put him in the car, 7 championships later. So Daniel, when we were, I still believe to this day, and I always will believe, that you can put money in tooling, you can put money in engineering, you can put money in all these places, but at the end of the day, it just comes down to one guy.
So I got a guy for you.
Oh, you do?
I got a guy for you. Because I feel like I have that oomph that you have. It's really a gut. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You have gut.
Yeah.
So I Am Athlete NASCAR, okay? One of the things that we want to get into doing consistently is going to GoPro Motorplex.
Which you own.
Okay. And so we went out there, and there was just one driver. We had Haley Deegan out there,
I'm excited about this.
Right.
Where this is going.
There were so many other people that came out, and there was just one guy that just stood out. So many people on the track that day. It was just one driver. He led the way, all laps, right? 2 races, right? Didn't even have anybody touch his bumper. You remember that day?
He got out in front and was gone.
He was gone.
I
don't know if he braked.
That's
once.
Impressive.
Channing Crowder.
So,
man, I'm signing to a contract right now. Can I just buy an option on you for a year? We'll see how you develop.
What can you do with them? What can you do with them? Seriously.
I'm too big. I'm 250 pounds. I'm 6'3", 250 pounds. I'm too big.
In those go-karts, I mean, the thing is when you have Haley out there who weighs about 100 pounds, it's hard to overcome that difference.
That weight difference.
It's hard. I mean, we could put 150 pounds of lead on her cart, so you guys are exactly the same, then we'll see.
That's what
then
it
we'll
is.
see, when all things being equal.
Right.
I was ready.
But can you take a guy like this and throw him in a developmental program and get him to where you need him to be? Start him out, maybe.
Joe Gibbs done reached out to me,
I
Childress,
gotta fight for you
I'm a free agent now.
But really, you're too old.
Well, he didn't. I just knew some names.
I gotta fight for you.
just said RC, all right.
Justin looking at him at infants.
So your ideal owner. So, okay, Chan, your ideal owner, who would you want to drive for?
Actually, and not just because he's here, Justin.
Why?
Because he's young. and he's progressive, and he's thinking about what's in the future. Let me know if I'm wrong. Like, and I was gonna ask this question too about, like, there's these old teams, there's these old, guys that were very successful back in the day.
Absolutely.
And you seem like you're more progressive. So to answer that, if my big ass could ever get one of them cars and really do something, I would want to race for the more progressive guy that's looking forward, looking to the future.
Yeah.
Right.
You want to be a part of something that's got an upward trajectory, something that's growing. You want to be on the front end of something, and that's what we're trying to do. I mean, this
I
is
like how you saw what he just did there. He said, so that's what y'all doing?
Yeah, we're doing that. To the moon.
Yeah, to the moon. But you didn't catch that. Chain usually catch that.
Yeah.
I mean, he was really just talking about himself, like, yo, we just.
Yeah,
That's what he just said.
And that's that old man stuff when they don't want any credit.
You love that.
Man, Justin knows he's the man. Let's be the man. Like, why not?
I will say this is the most transformative time in the history of this sport.
Yes.
Right? I mean, we got new cars, we got new owners, we're coming up on a television renewal, we're going to new racetracks, we got diversity more than we've ever seen in the top levels. We got all these things happening. Now is the moment to come in and put a stake in the ground as someone that embraces that change, can see the future, can see 5, 10, 15 years down the line, I'm gonna build my business around that vision. I'm not gonna try to get revenue around this race shop I built 30 years ago that was state-of-the-art 30 years ago, which isn't state-of-the-art anymore. And that's just, I'm lucky. I mean, I'm lucky because I came in at this time with a clean slate, and I can say, how do we make moves right now motivated by our views and our visions of the future?
Right.
Of how to be the next great team in this sport.
Is there any, hate, it would be called, the young and upcomer, when every sport changes, when it goes to fun and gun, when it goes to small ball and NBA, the rule, like the old way of doing things. So you come in and you're being more, like we say, progressive. You're looking towards the future. Is there any hate with that? Do you hear any rumblings in the back about, it's Justin, he messing stuff up?
I haven't felt any of that. I mean, it's been important for me along the way from day one to always treat people with respect, to always do what I say I'm gonna do. If you do that every single day, then I don't have for someone to say something bad about me, they'd have to make it up. And so, I think if you just live by that tenet, if you live by that principle, and I try to be very respectful. When I do these interviews, I say things like I just said. That's not a slight towards the establishment. That's not me saying, that's no lack of respect for the guys that have been doing it for 20, 30 years. But you gotta adapt to changing times, you gotta change, and this is Trackhouse's opportunity.
Right.
This is Trackhouse's opportunity. And when these guys all came into the sport the same way. They were the young guys once. They were the young guys once that came in and did things differently. So I'm no different. It's just a bit of a different game. Everybody that I worked with, I studied and tried to see what they did well and not well, and learn something from it. You've got these guys that try to build their empire through their race team. They try to build their career through their race team. And then you've got guys who are very, very successful in other industries and went, I'm gonna go play in NASCAR, right? Because they made some money, they like the sport, they want to be vested in it. And Harry was one of those guys.
He wants to play in NASCAR.
The engine sounds amazing.
He's a child when they crank the engines up at the beginning of every race.
That's all I know.
He starts slapping my arm every time. I was like, we knew what was about to happen, bro.
That's the kind of people we want. That's right. I'm the same way. I've always watched and paid attention to the people that I admire to learn from them. Always. It started with my grandfather when he was the first one to take me to a racetrack. He was a corn farmer in Iowa. And then my father, watching my father's business career, watch him do amazing things growing up in Northern California in the technology industry and getting my education in my house growing up, watching him in business.
In my house.
And then coming in to racing and seeing people like Chip Ganassi that I raced for, and Harry Scott, and Tom Milner, who owned the BMW factory team, my first job racing. I've tried to take something from everybody. I'll take something from this conversation right now.
Right. Remember the moments we had on this show where it's like, that's it. You have the it factor, right? And how old are you now? You're about to turn 40, you're 40?
Yeah.
40? Like, you have it, right? So it's going to be amazing to watch you over the next 15 years, 5 years, right? Like you have it. There's something special in you when it comes to ownership. And I know where Chan was going when he was like, you know, we said like, this is the owner that I would want to drive for. Because we see that in football, right? Like we sit back and we were like, oh, that owner over there, I don't know if I want to go there. The way he's run his business the last 30 years, players know that, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's something special that you guys have going over at Trackhouse. You know,
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
In football, when you're coming up through the ranks and you got an eye on playing in the NFL, are there owner personalities and certain types of owners where you go, I want to go play for that owner?
Yeah.
I want to go play for that guy. Maybe not that city, maybe not that quarterback, but I want to play for Jerry, or I want to play for Mark.
So I would say, Chan, that when you're young and you're in high school and you're in college, you're just chasing the dream.
Yep.
You just want to get there. It doesn't even matter.
Yep.
I don't care how I get there, what team I suit up for. Well, you think about teams. You definitely do think about teams. But you don't think about that. When you're a veteran, that's when that kicks in. You're more seasoned. You sit back and you're like, all right, this experience that I just had on this team in this locker room, that was great. That wasn't great. You know, and then what happens in the sport is when we go to Super Bowls, when we go to the award shows and we get together, we always ask this question, right? Whether I'm sitting down talking to Peyton Manning or Adrian Peterson, Jerry Rice, how is this guy, right? Whether it's the owner, it's the player, we always ask that question as athletes. And then that shapes how we start having those conversations. Yeah. You know?
So it starts with ownership, right? Because it's culture. Now, there are some owners that are really involved, and I'm sort of talking in sports in general, right? But it's like there are owners that are really involved, and then there's the owners that you don't really ever see. They're up in the box, right? They're doing their thing or whatever. But then you guys are in the trenches with you.
That's right.
Driving the culture, influencing the culture, whether you're, you know, working in the, like doing recovery for the athletes, or you're the athletes themselves, or marketing department, or stadium services, or like whatever it is, that's the owner that I want to be.
That's right.
That's the owner that I want to be. I want to be somebody that they go, I want to go work for Trackhouse because Justin is involved and he's supportive of everybody in the organization and he appreciates us and he's there for us.
Okay, so in football, there's some owners that get too involved and they get in the way.
There's diminishing returns.
Like we go to Cincinnati Bengals, he just gets involved a little bit too much, right? Yeah. He's there every single day, but he doesn't let his guys be the guys, meaning you hired a president, you hired a head coach, you have a defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, and they want to put their hands on everything. So are you one of those owners where
I don't micromanage?
You don't micromanage?
No.
Yes.
No, I'm involved because I want to know what's happening on the shop floor. I want to know what people in the workforce are talking about and thinking about. What do they want? What do they need? But I'm also someone that tries to hire and put the best people in their positions and then ask them if they need anything and then stand back.
Right.
But I got to ask them if they need anything. I got to be involved with them.
Right.
My belief is that you know, good ownership is present ownership.
Right.
Right. Good ownership is somebody that is there and is talking to people and is you know, involved in people's lives. And because the thing is with this new car coming to NASCAR, these teams are migrating from, you know, engineering and manufacturing companies, because we're not building the cars anymore, we're buying them, putting them together and going to the racetrack, into sports teams, into marketing companies and sports teams, where we were spending 50% of our money and our time and our bandwidth designing and building. Now, that 50% becomes, you know, 15% assembling, putting the cars together and taking them to the racetrack. So you've just opened up 35% of bandwidth in your company. And to me, that opportunity in there is to build a team. Right. To build a real team. We call them race teams, but they're racing manufacturing companies. But I want to build a team.
Wow.
And so to build a team, you have to know who your players are. And you have to know their stories. You have to know what motivates them, and you have to empower them, and you have to give them the opportunity to be as successful as their dreams will allow.
Right.
And you kind of hit it talking about, you know, sports and looking at ownership and saying, do I want to play for that team? As a player, you look and see who that guy hires. Who the Steelers, 3 head coaches in 50 years or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Bill Belichick up in New England. They found the right guy to do that job, so I don't have to micromanage. You look at the sorry teams in the NFL and NBA, they're going through coaches like this.
Call them out. What's the name? Give me a couple of sorry.
I start with my team, the damn Miami Dolphins.
You call it.
They done been through coaches, 3 offensive coordinators in 3 years.
So why is that? Why do you think that is? Is it a culture issue? Is it hard to find people to buy in? Or is because they're nothing's concrete enough to buy into.
Let me answer that, Chan, because you have a great relationship with the Miami Dolphins, and I don't want you to mess it up.
Oh, no.
Let me do it. It starts with ownership. It starts with the top. It's exactly what you're talking about. I love Mr. Ross. He's a giant in the real estate business. He's awesome. And he's also done some great things, right? And then there's some things that we question as well. But he's not there every single day. Everything that you just talked about. And there's sometimes he gets in the way. Like, prime example is, I want Tua. When he could have had who? The kid from Herbert, Justin Herbert, right? And it's okay if you know the game, but you don't know the game. You're not spending, countless hours, 15, 16 hours a day studying and breaking down tape on all collegiate quarterbacks. But your general manager is. And now you override him, right?
That's a problem.
And so it starts with ownership. So I just want you to maintain your relationship.
It's fine. Well, you know what? The Jets with the Johnsons.
Oh, so you're going to don't put me in that
They're
spot.
not, now you can call, I'm going to call you out. You can call me out. Johnson and Johnson brothers, one of them was a liaison for France or something.
Ireland
or something like that. So he's
an
not
ambassador.
there. He's not around. So now his little brother had nothing to do with the team, and now he's trying to run the team. But even whoever's running it, like, who owns the team? Is it Jerry Jones? Is it the Rooneys? Is it the Crafts or whatever it is? Those owners have to figure out who to put in place. If they have to be in the facility too much, when you go to the paint shop, do you have to tell somebody to buff this differently or use this type of paint? You just go to oversee the process.
I'm here.
But if you have to go in there and nitpick a guy about a bumper, whoever's in control of that bumper, bro, he's not good. Why did you get him? And now I would say from athletes, you want to see a guy that knows how to put guys in place more than needs to come in and tell me how to hit a track.
Shannon, let's bring it back to NASCAR. You're talking about the owners, but the crew members, the mechanics, they don't always go after the owners. Yes, you're the security and the paycheck and all of that, but we do follow the drivers as well. If you have a driver that wins, you'll bypass whatever dysfunctional you have with a team for the fact that you can be in a position to win. So with NASCAR, you have the ability to attach yourself to a driver. But my opinion, I wouldn't tend to follow the team owner because the team owners, NASCAR, there are differences, but not in the top. The top 5 teams, the Hendricks, the Penske's, your Gibbs, they're pretty close. In comparison, what sets those teams apart are the people and the drivers they have, the pit crews they have, the crew chiefs they have. So, as a mechanic in this sport, Justin doing what he's doing, you don't expect to see Justin Marks all the time, Rick Hendrick all the time in the race shop, but when you do, you get excited because you know that he's there, but at the same time, when you have a driver that can win a race every week, it's going to push you a little bit harder to get turn those wrenches a little bit tighter.
So let me ask you a question, Rocko, because you are a legend in this sport. Okay, first they freaking got rules around you, the Rocko rule, trying to take the tire, bounce the tire off. You can't do that. You can't do that, Rocko. You can't do that. So let me ask you a question. So, all right, you guys are following the drivers, but when you see an owner hands-on like Justin and doing it the right way, building a team, not a race team, you think that will change the game?
Well, that's the reason why every new race fan, especially black race fan who comes to the track, is going to gravitate towards his team when they see the team at the track. First of all, he's got Courtney Edmonds and Lamar in his pit, and those are beasts. They just look the part. Then their color schemes. Everything is just attractive to the
branding, the marketing.
The branding, the marketing. Then you have Pitbull. So if I knew nothing about racing, as a black man into the sport, and I'm trying to give it a free shot, I'm going to gravitate to your team, Justin. And from what I'm hearing and from what we're seeing and everything that you're saying now, that's got to be exciting as well as you have a big responsibility that you're being looked at by a new demographic and a new possible fan base.
Trendsetter.
You are.
Well, I will say, to your point, you control the variables that you can control, right? And there are some variables in the game or the race or whatever that you just can't control. But you focus on controlling the things that you can. Winning cures a lot of ills.
Yes.
Sound like football.
You know what I'm saying? If you can win, but the thing is, if the foundation underneath those wins isn't solid, because eventually you're going to stop winning. right?
Then you
You're going
chase
to need
the
to figure
money.
out how to get back, right?
Yeah.
So when you stop winning and those foundations aren't solid and that culture's not solid, it'd be hard. There's real cracks in the armor.
So,
you know?
because like you're speaking my language now, right? Let's go back to business. I mean, I want to know what books you're reading. I want to know who you're studying. And first, before you answer those, talk to me about ownership. What owners are you studying? Is it Robert Kraft? Is it the Rooneys? You know, is it Joe Gibbs in racing? You know, talk to me about that because you're just different, bro.
I mean, I have a lot of respect for Roger Penske. I have a lot of respect for Joe Gibbs. I have a lot of respect for Rick Hendrick. Besides studying those guys, I've got friends that work and have worked in those organizations. And I said, what's it like to be in that organization? Right? Were you happy there every day? What would you do different? What would you do better? What's Mr. Hendrick like? How often do you see him? How often does he talk to you?
Right.
Those kinds of things. I mean, I read, man, I'm all over the board.
But you read it.
I mean, I read philosophy, and then I'll put the philosophy book down and read Sports Business Journal. I read biographies. I mean, I just finished a book about the Comanche Indians in Oklahoma, and 150 years ago. I'm all over the board, and I can read books like that and read stories about perseverance and about courage and about resilience, and there's lessons in all that stuff.
Right.
But I'm sort of just a student of success in any form that it comes in. You know, I read about Elon Musk. I mean, I read about these guys and go, Elon Musk, who's by all accounts is basically a total,
Right.
but is an incredibly visionary person and sees the world differently, right? Who starts a business and goes, you know, it'd be great. Let's try to get all the human race to Mars. Who thinks like that? I read about a guy like that, and then I pivot and I look at our sport and go like, what's Mars in our sport? What's taking people to Mars in NASCAR? Yeah. And I think it's building a brand and a team that transcends the sport, that has a brand penetration into culture and entertainment and music and things like that. Hence our partnership with Armando. And it's, that's only the beginning. That's only the beginning for us. And this new car allows that opportunity like it's never had before, because I can take like that 35% that I was talking about that we were making cars with. Now that's gone. I can take that 35% and go, how do we make Trackhouse a team and a brand that's relevant in music,
right?
And in other cultures and all that. I mean,
that's Mars.
Which is interesting because you always ask about the next gen car.
That was my
you
question.
always ask about the next gen car.
Because Justin, I hit on it twice already, but he didn't get into it.
Because it's like, all right, well, what's the difference now if it stabilizes and it's the playing field's equal now, right? So to me, just hearing you talk, it's like, okay, well, there's the driver aspect, but also you can gain leverage and create some space and have an edge in ownership.
Well, to me, it's the people.
Right.
I mean, it really comes down to the people. This is the analogy that I use sometimes, and it'll work here. If you've got all these NFL teams that have different amounts of money to spend, and then you've got one NFL team that's got more money than everybody else, and with that money, they have a whole engineering staff, and they can engineer a football whose shape, material, weight, color, everything perfectly fits the quarterback that's playing for that team. His hand fits perfectly in it. Given his arm and throwing mechanics, they can engineer the ball to make sure that the release speed is right, to make sure it spins right, engineered perfect, and no one else can have that ball.
That's NASCAR.
And then you've got a team that doesn't have the money and can't really afford to do that. Well, this next-gen car is the same ball for everybody. Because what we were doing is we were engineering and spending money on putting a superior product against our competition on the racetrack. So we're playing with a ball that's better than everybody else, or whoever it is at that time. Well, now everybody's got same ball.
Right. So
now success is like it is in any other sport, where it's cohesiveness, teamwork, culture, support, talent. That's what I believe.
And I know Trackhouse, Pitbull is your partner and owner. Michael Jordan's with 23 over there with Bubba Watson and them. What is a minority owner? Like, do they give you a check and back up? Is it sales? Like, what does that mean?
Everybody's different. I don't know the 2311 deal. I only know our deal. And what's really great about our relationship with Armando is it was important for me from day one to associate with people that were passionate about racing, believed in what we were doing, that were in a totally different space, where we can bring them to NASCAR and they can bring our brand and our sport to their audience. I didn't want any element of this to be transactional. It was never going to be, okay, singer X I'm going to pay you, $1 million a year, and you're going to do this many social posts, and you're going to talk about us in a song, and it's a transaction. Never, ever going to be that. And it's not that way with Armando. We are truly partners in that we are contributing assets to each other's careers and each other's platforms and businesses to help lift both of us up.
Right. Let me ask you a question. Why are you saying Armando and not Pitbull? No. I think that's because you read philosophy. You're a deep thinker.
Because my relationship is with the man, not the entertainer.
I didn't know his real name.
I ain't know it either. But we keep saying Pitbull. The whole world knows Pitbull. And you keep saying Armando. Yeah. But break that down to me.
Because he's not Pitbull to me. He's my business. He's Armando Christian Perez, my business partner, our business partner at Trackhouse, and he's so much more than Pitbull. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's an investor. He's an entrepreneur. He's a philanthropist. He's intelligent, and he's industrious, and he's driven, and there's so much more than Fireball. You know what I mean? It's just,
what's your big fan? Come on,
I'm telling you, I have never been to a show quite like a Pitbull show. It's amazing. We went to his concert in Michigan this year. I think it was his first one after COVID, and it was on the Michigan race weekend. He was in Detroit, and man, there was like 17,000 people, standing room only. They sold vision obscured tickets for $10. We couldn't even see the stage, and it was just, and it was like noise and fog and energy. And we saw him after the show. I'm like, man, you just turned a 17,000 person outdoor amphitheater into like a club in Miami. It was awesome. I was watching him, but I kept turning around and seeing the crowd.
Right.
I mean, it's a real gift he's got. It's a real gift.
And Dale?
Huh? Oh, all the time. That's how he signs off every text and email.
Dale.
But he's got this message of positivity and turning a negative to a positive, and that's and I hope we can talk about this, because an element of Trackhouse is being stewards of that message too, of positivity and giving voices to the unheard, and taking this opportunity we've got in this sport and trying to make a difference in minority youth in America, and try to give educational opportunities to kids. And Armando's got this Pitbull has these slam schools that are sort of sports themed schools for kids to go to high school and create an opportunity for themselves that wouldn't necessarily be motivated by school. We've only begun the process of determining what our opportunity is to make a difference. And that's something that's sort of core to the DNA of Trackhouse. Right. I didn't want to put it out there that this was our mission and then try to just find something to announce and try to hit it right away. It's like, let's be authentic and intelligent and respectful about how we think about how to make a difference. Right. I mean, one of the things is that the crowd at NASCAR races looks a lot different these days, in the good way, in a really, really good way. My father came to Phoenix and made this comment to me on pit road. He's like, this crowd looks different. I mean, there's black people here, there's Latin people here, there's young people here, there's women here. That is proof that we're sort of moving as a sport in the right direction. I mean, Trackhouse next year is going to have, right now, has the most diverse pit crew in the sport. We got, guys that played in the NFL. We got guys that played Major League Lacrosse, and it's amazing to see that because they've got these stories, and I want to amplify these stories. And I never thought about that. I never really thought about that. I was like, we got to win races and create opportunity for our sponsors. And in the spring of 2020, I was in the middle of thinking about how do we build something more than just racing, and what is that thing? And at the end of May, I turned on the TV after George Floyd, and I was like, there are people hurting, there are people that need help, and that's the mission. We have to find a way to make a difference and to empower young people and to just, even if it's just a little, even if it's one person, if we make a difference in one person's life, that's something that it's important to Trackhouse, and I always want to be important to Trackhouse. Wow.
And it's something you're doing.
That's something
Those
that's
guys
important.
appreciate it. To your teams, they wear your shirt and their crew shirts with pride.
Yeah.
They're happy to be there, and it resonates. So, I commend you on what you're doing. Just from the inside out, in the sport, that it's refreshing to see an owner and a team with such a forward thinking and open mind and an excitement about them and an edginess about them where it makes it cool to be a part of this sport. Yeah. So you're doing a good job with that. And
I think the last thing I'll say really is when I think about the future, we've talked a lot about disruption, and we talked about new ideas and change in the future and everything. I mean, NASCAR has been a sport that has had a very specific type of fan, and it's had a very specific geographical footprint. NASCAR is a sport that can be for everybody. I believe that.
Facts.
And that's what I like about the new car, because we can start being sports and marketing organizations. We can start investing that 35% in philanthropy and outreach and try to get disruptive and in different things. And where I would like to see NASCAR is I would like to see NASCAR on an equal footing with as many other sports as far as cultural relevance as possible, right? I mean, like the NBA penetrates all the different cultures, and there's these guys. LeBron James is a brand, and the shoes are brands, and NASCAR I think has that opportunity, but we all need to recognize that opportunity and all be pushing cohesively in that direction with NASCAR support, and so hopefully we're a part of that for a long time.
10-4.
Give me one book I need to read.
One book that you need to read. I am a sucker for adventure. And it's not a book that's a business book or anything like that, but I've read it 3 times in my life. There was a book called Alive that was written in 1973 by Pierre Paul Reed, and it was turned into a movie later about a rugby team that crashed.
They did.
Well, here's the thing. It's about
He's talking philosophy.
It scarred me for life.
You got Justin talking philosophy.
I was in
Rocko talking about eating booty.
Tell him, Justin. Tell him, Justin. It was frozen booty. Tell him, Justin. I can't make this
The
up.
important message in the book is, this was a rugby team. It was a team of athletes that crashed their plane in the Andes Mountains, and they were lost. And they had a transistor radio, and they were listening to news broadcasts of the search. And they searched for them for like 3 weeks. And they came on the radio, and they said they've called off the search. They're all dead. And they weren't. They all decided that we have to save ourselves. And with hardly any food and with any climbing equipment or anything like that, 2 of those guys climbed out of the Andes Mountains themselves, found a rancher, found the police, got helicopters, came back to the mountain and saved everybody's life. And to me, I read that book every couple years because to me it's inspiring in just how far somebody can go and how much fight somebody can have. So we have bad days, we think about how badly we want something. That's wanting something.
Wow. You didn't touch on the booty.
Justin Marks.
You touched on it for
They
us.
ate themselves.
The philosopher.
To survive. They had to eat the body.
I seen the movie.
The booty cheek eater.